Welcome to another episode. Today, I'm joined by Angus, who we've all known as the foundational lead at Stargate, but he is now the freshly minted product lead at Stargate. And over the last few weeks, there's of course been a lot of changes for Stargate, LayerZero, and the Interop ecosystem. So today, we'll be talking about some of those things.
Thanks for having me back.
Angus, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of discourse in the last few weeks around LayerZero and the whole proposal, the bid, the acquisition, the late drama with Wormhole coming in. But we haven't really heard anything from you. Like you haven't tweeted, you haven't put out anything in public. So I'm curious to get your take on how everything went down. So what did you make of the proposal from LayerZero?
Yeah, I have. It's been a little busy. I haven't been on Twitter all that much. I the few things that I was kind of very public about or did do very publicly was during the acquisition process. Me and Brian did like a community Q&A because, as you said, like there was so much discourse happening on Twitter, a lot of different proposals, different ideas, and different opinions. But ultimately, what really mattered was the DAO's opinion, the community, and the token holders. And there was kind of initially a lot of concerns, and there was a reviewed proposal, and then there was still kind of questions around what the intention was or why this is better for Stargate, etc. And so me and Brian did like a community Q&A that I think honestly went really well. It was very well attended by a lot of the large holders, as well as just like general community members that were concerned. We brought a bunch of people up on stage and kind of fielded a lot of questions. And in that, I think I gave like a very clear kind of thought of what my opinion was. I also posted a comment on the proposal itself. Like I definitely think from the very first time I heard about this as an idea, I thought it was the best direction forward for Stargate. I think I was the first person to really move into the Stargate Foundation. Started as a one person team, really just supporting the DAO and all the things that it needed. And then eventually the team grew to, I think at our max we were about 20 people, really just serving the product and the protocol as the DAO needed us to, but it was never a team that was kind of innovating and building on top of the protocol or building on top of the product. It was very much just kind of like a almost like a service arm to the DAO. And I think what we slowly started realizing was that there is so much more that Stargate could be doing in terms of innovation and frontier building that we weren't really able to do because of kind of the structure of the team, but also just a lot of the original innovation around Stargate did come out of LayerZero Labs. Like the Stargate V1 protocol was built by LayerZero Labs. The Stargate V2 protocol was built by LayerZero Labs and kind of introduced into the DAO and handed over to token holders. And I don't think it's kind of that controversial to say these days, but DAO governance is not the best way to run a profitable business. It is a very fair way to run a protocol, and it's really kind of cool and interesting. But for Stargate and for a lot of the other large DAOs out there, you do need a very strong, innovative tech business behind it. And I think that was always the intention was that's what LayerZero Labs have in a super, super strong engineering team of 80 plus engineers or 70 plus engineers. And being able to have everyone pointed in the same direction just makes so much more sense.
I mean, so you said you felt that this was the right move. Is it more because like you said, you weren't able to focus on innovation because there was just so much going on anyway? But from the outside, it did not seem like you guys were lagging behind in anything, right? Because you did have the Stargate Hydra launch, you had the new UI launch, you had a lot going on. So I guess it didn't feel like there's not a lot of new stuff, but I guess you're trying to over optimize here.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things. From the outside, it probably seemed like Stargate was doing relatively well. We had a lot of chain launches. We were the canonical bridge for a lot of chains day one, which takes a pretty decent engineer. You guys will know how much it takes to support a chain day one, and we did that 30 times over the last year, 40 times maybe. But that came at a cost. It was a lot of sprints to get there, and I think during that process, we just realized how much kind of redundant work and redundant conversation was ongoing, particularly on the BD side. A lot of chain teams, when they're looking for a LayerZero endpoint deployment, actually want it because they need Stargate's Hydra to go live, or they come to Stargate, but then they need the endpoint to go live because we're built on top of LayerZero, and that being serviced or sold as like a package together just makes so much more sense and reduces the conversation from two Telegram group chats into one. I think everybody would love to consolidate Telegram group chats. And then on the engineering side, obviously it's less like the LayerZero protocol still needs to be deployed and the Stargate protocol still needs to be deployed. But there's just a lot of like inefficiencies and thrashing that exists when you have like separated Slack channels and like different processes and like even like project from like a project management standpoint. Um, and so yes, I think we were able to like keep up with the industry generally in terms of like expansion, but we're not really here to like keep up with the industry. I think Stargate could be doing we could literally be shipping like 10x faster, and I think LayerZero feel the same about a lot of the ideas that they had. And Brian said this a couple times over the acquisition process. Like, there's a lot of ideas that like Brian would have, and he would come to me and be like, "Hey, we have this idea that we should build on top of LayerZero. Like, do you think Stargate could build it?" And I'm like, "We are so underwater. We have 7 chain launches. This like we just cannot get there." And so that idea would either like maybe LayerZero would build it themselves or they'd like partner with someone else to kind of ship it, and it just doesn't make any sense. And so instead, like having Stargate be this like interface for all value transfer on top of LayerZero, and now again like having all engineering efforts pointed in the same direction makes a lot of sense. So I think the end goal is just like we can now ship like 10x faster and do so much more. And I think that's it has already like proven to be the case. Is already over like the last couple of weeks as this acquisition has happened. That is proving to be true, but I think it's only going to accelerate as well.
And I feel like in the last 6 months, you also started making some moves that were not directly attached to LayerZero, right? Like you added the Circle CCTP Mint and Bridge on Solana, and like there were similar moves as well. So I feel like maybe that doesn't happen anymore, and you'll be more tightly aligned in terms of your product suite to everything LayerZero.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, regardless, like the decision to add CCTP was just like there are a lot of users who want to go to and from Solana. There is a route that is the fastest route that's available today is CCTP v2. Like even Across came out with their Solana implementation is slower than CCTP v2. Like why spend the engineering effort to do that when you're competing with a relatively free route and it's kind of already available. I do definitely think that in terms of like aligning with the broader LayerZero product suite, like there are a few things that are coming out over the next couple of weeks and months that I think will make a lot of sense for Stargate to include that is coming out of like LayerZero's product launches. So I think it also kind of happened on both sides. Like there were other initiatives that LayerZero were taking that they didn't really want to take that because like it would make a lot more sense for Stargate to do it, but like we didn't have the engineering resource, and so kind of LayerZero had to build something out separately. And again, like combining all efforts and all engineers towards the same goal, the same mission, is just going to make like the story a lot clearer and also like the user experience better.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Like I feel like nobody in the crypto industry is a stranger to the Telegram group coordination lag and like all the Slack channels or all the different like platforms that we're getting pinged on from different directions. Like
Yeah,
nobody wants that. So I think it's just easier to run in the same direction. And then now you guys will be in the same office as well, like most of you.
yeah,
So I feel
yes,
like that
exactly.
will rise.
Yeah, it's been awesome. We after post acquisition, a lot of the old Stargate Foundation team came over to the LayerZero Labs office, and I'm still here now. And it's just like there's such a good energy post this acquisition. There's a lot of cool things happening over the next couple months, and it's just like yeah, the point that I'm making about like being able to ship faster and people being excited about what we're doing is really palpable. So it's awesome.
There was also a late bid from Wormhole. Did you even anticipate something like that happening? Because like Tom and I were talking about this, and we half joked that this is possible. Like somebody could just come in, just try to like delay the process or like change things a bit. So we half joked about it, but it actually ended up happening. I don't know if you anticipated that, and like how did you kind of perceive that move from Wormhole?
Yeah, I definitely anticipated interest from other parties when this proposal went up. And like to be clear, there was a ton of interest from a lot of different parties that we kind of fielded at the foundation. Um, I think it's worth clarifying that like an offer versus an intent to offer is very, very different. Um, So yeah, I anticipated that both there would be real offers and real interest, which there was from a number of parties, and then there would be kind of less real offers and less real intent to bid, just to kind of throw a spanner in the works. And I think there is kind of a mix of that we saw on the proposal.
I mean, realistically, I feel like because Layer Zero and Stargate are so closely aligned, like at least in my head, the thought of uh, any other interop protocol specifically owning Stargate is just it just doesn't fit right. Like if somebody outside our little interop bubble kind of owns it, okay, fine. Like you can still live with it, but then when you think Layer Zero, you think Stargate, and like vice versa. So it would have just been odd.
Yeah, I mean, again, I very clearly would have like personal biases against particular parties actually acquiring Stargate, but it just makes absolutely no sense. Like there are some companies out there that have attempted to do what Stargate is doing and are not able to do it, and them buying Stargate would not make them more able to do it. Like it isn't necessarily like, yes, the tech, like Stargate V2, nobody else has or probably will be able to like replicate Hydra in the way that it's been out there, and we've discussed this on your podcast before or when we were in Denver. But more than that, it's just like you need the right people behind it. And like clearly the combination of the LayerZero team pushing LayerZero and the Stargate team pushing Stargate, and it's like some of that kind of happening together has been the right combining factors to make this successful. Just putting it in someone else's hands doesn't mean that it's going to continue to be successful. I think people severely underestimate how complicated Stargate V2 is as a dual application on top of LayerZero. I don't know if a lot of people know, but like Stargate is actually two completely separate omni-chain applications on top of LayerZero messaging, and like those two interact in a very unique way. We have this like off-chain entity. Like there's severe complexity to running Stargate V2, and moving it over into someone else's hands is going to take like 12 to 24 months of onboarding, and by that point like you can just say goodbye. Like you cannot let things sit for that long, especially in crypto and especially in Interop.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on for Stargate that made it super attractive for like anyone to kind of make a bid. Like your treasury itself was 95 million, if I'm not wrong. So I don't know. It just made a lot of sense for Layer Zero to make that build, and then it was nice to see all of the interop like discourse going on. Like suddenly, interop was the main character in crypto for 10 days. I feel like that was super nice. But what does this like change for you personally? Because like earlier, you spent a lot of time kind of managing the team itself, plus the foundation role, right? Like you were in the DAO, like figuring out proposals in the Discord, like talking to everyone. But now there is no DAO, there is no foundation. So like, what does that change for you?
For me personally, it changes a decent amount, and I think in a lot of good ways. Like to your point, there's a lot of additional stuff you have to do when you're leading a team. Like as I said, but the team grew up to 20 people, and so there's like just a lot more like management that you have to do, like operational stuff, like all the usual things that come with a team growing. And then there is also the whole like kind of DAO governance side. We spend a lot of time with our largest voters, just spending time with them, making sure they're kind of aligned with the roadmap and the strategy. I think there was a ton of discourse during this proposal around like who's voting on this. The Stargate DAO for the last 2 years or like 18 months, all of the largest voters are just literally just people in the community. Like there weren't no Stargate Foundation team members ever voted, no LayerZero Labs team members ever voted. There were no like all of the VCs have been unlocked. We've been fully unlocked for at least 6 months. So like even before that, basically fully unlocked or basically unlocked. And so it was really just like making sure that the people who are the largest voters in the community are kind of aligned with what we're doing. Um, and to your point, now they're all of the decisions kind of get made within LayerZero Labs on kind of business strategy. And a lot of the additional functional or like operational overhead of running a company now kind of gets absorbed into like LayerZero Labs before the acquisition, I think had 130 people. And so like obviously you have a fully functional like operations and HR department. And so like now that just gets folded into there. And so for me personally, like I spend a lot less time doing things that don't matter to Stargate as a product or Stargate
Yeah.
as like a business. And now I get to spend all of my time doing that.
Does that
So
mean more sleep for Angus?
it does mean more sleep, and ironically, I will post this on Twitter one day, but I have one of these Aura rings to track my sleep, and I got it 6 months ago, and for the last 2 weeks, like the last 2 weeks, you can probably imagine, like immediately post acquisition, I've been super busy. Like I've been in here 7 days a week, 12 hours a day in the office, but last week I broke my record for the most sleep on average, and then this week I broke it again. So like the last 2 weeks, I've slept more than I've ever slept in the last year.
I know Brian Johnson is going to be super happy. Like he
Yeah,
keeps saying like that's the best performance enhancing drug. So like I can't
yeah.
imagine Angus with sleep at
You
this
can
point.
I'm waiting for the chart looks amazing. The chart looks up only for my sleep, and I'm gonna post, and the best way to get more sleep is to get acquired.
Or like just not have a DAO and like not have to deal with any of that.
Yeah. No.
So what does this like change for the Interop ecosystem now? Like Stargate being run in house by LayerZero. I feel like nobody actually thought of Stargate separately as LayerZero because it was the flagship app, at least within the Interop ecosystem, right? So I'm kind of curious if that changes something for people who are building in the ecosystem. And
I
I
don't know
don't
if
mean
this
this
is
from
a
like
hot.
a comms way. Like, of course, like
Yeah.
there's you can easily talk to the same team, but like more strategically.
More strategically, I think it's kind of what I said earlier. Like it just means that, to your point, like nobody thought Stargate was like being slow or like falling behind.
Mm.
Nobody thought Layer Zero was being slow or falling behind. Like I don't think either of those are true either. I definitely didn't think either of those things. But I just know how much time I personally spent on things that don't matter, and how much time we as a team spent on things that don't matter. And similarly for Layer Zero, like how much time they spent not being able to just like direct focus to Stargate, because there was always this like weird debate of where things should go. And so like again, maybe this is a kind of a aggressive way of saying it, but I think what it means is that like Interop is going to change. Like we are all of these heads pointed in the same direction, and being able to like ship at the pace that we know that we can means that like we are going to really accelerate in what we're doing and go beyond what even like people have thought interrupt protocols would be doing. And so like Stargate being this like interface to move, USDC between a couple chains, or like ETH between a couple chains, or OFTs between a couple chains, like that in even just 6 months is going to look so silly in hindsight that that was ever like what we were bound by. And so I think, and to be honest, like this, it'll be interesting to see how we look back at some of the like intents to bid that came in onto the proposal, because like again, so some of the teams that were like interested in acquiring Stargate, I wonder how much of it was like out of or how much of it was with an intent to like slow Stargate down because of
Mm.
the knowledge of what could be happening over the next six
I
to
mean
twelve
that's
months. So
also fair, I guess. Like that's
yeah,
part of like
100%.
market dynamics.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't blame them. Like I would also be uh thinking the same thing on the other side of the table, but luckily I'm on this side of the table. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to shift gears to like talking about the Interop ecosystem. Now I feel like the Interop ecosystem is also in a very interesting spot because for the first 3-4 years, like all of us were focused on solving like the cross chain part of the puzzle, right? Like how do you bridge one asset to the other chain, and then figuring out that uh, offering for users, for chains, and for like applications. But I feel like now we've sort of solved that for real. Like that there's not too much to change.
Are you telling me that Interop is solved, Arjun?
So
Have you come around?
no, I've always said that it is solved, but like it's a never ending problem, right? Like there
Yes.
will always be more assets, more chains. So like you kind of have to work on it. It's an infinite problem. But I feel like um teams have started to work on newer offerings, like swaps are one of them, which I feel like are a no-brainer. Like we've had swaps on Jumper from day one. But I feel like there's just more and more tooling being added to Interop. And then there's absolutely no reason why teams in Interop who are still standing and like are in a good position, they can like expand beyond just this bubble and like go for bigger markets in a way. Like, do you agree with that sentiment or?
Yeah, 100%. I also like I don't think this is coming as a surprise to anyone. Like you said, like Jumpers had swaps from day one. Anyone
Right.
that has been able to offer it in a decent way, I think has had it from day one. My stance on swaps has always just been like when we can offer it in the right way, then we will. Like if we had built swaps on top of Stargate V1, it would have sucked. And like Jumper
Mm.
had it, and it kind of sometimes works and sometimes
Yeah.
doesn't. Building it on top of Stargate V2 is actually a lot better than I think people kind of would expect because everyone's like the only way you can do cross chain swaps is intense. If you build it on top of Stargate V2, I think it's actually better than people would expect. Um, but and I've said this on a couple podcasts now, like our focus was always like solve the actual fundamental underlying problem, which is what I think Stargate V2 and Hydra has done and is doing. And then on top of that, you can build anything you want. Like if
Yeah.
if 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 Stargate kind of is that stack for liquidity, global liquidity across all of these different ecosystems, and you kind of can own that layer, then you can start verticalizing on top of that. And so, um, particularly in a lot of the like intent versus messaging debates, I've always said that same thing. Like you have to solve this underlying problem first, what I view as the harder problem, and then you can always go and like build above that stack, and verticalize. And I think that's definitely like something that we want to be doing.
I mean, in a way, Hyperliquid had the same playbook, right? Like they solved the liquidity problem first, and then now that they have, I don't know, $2-3 billion in liquidity, they can just uh, allow that EVM ecosystem to kind of tap into that. So if you listen to all of their builders, they're super aligned and they're like building applications using that liquidity. So I feel like it shouldn't be any different for us Target. Like you have all of
Yeah,
that protocol owned liquidity.
yeah.
But what I'm curious about is like, do you see Stargate kind of expanding beyond the swaps vertical in a way? Like, do you see yourself going into like different markets? Because I feel like at some point, Interop teams will do that. I don't know when. We like all the teams already have like dabbled into different markets in a way, but it's not like the positioning is not clear as such right now.
Yeah, I definitely see us doing that. I think like to your point, it's a never ending interrupt is like a never ending problem, and like bridging and swapping cross chains and doing anything cross chain is a never ending problem. And we will always continue to uh kind of offer products within that sphere. But there's just so much like there's so much opportunity within everything that we're doing and everything that we're not doing. And we have ideas on how there are a lot of kind of primitives that exist in the world today. Like if you think about simple like value transfer on a single chain, everyone knows like moving ETH or moving ERC20s from one wallet to another super simple. Then you start doing it cross chain, and it's taken us like 3 or 4 years to get to a point where,
Mhm.
or okay, like 7 or 8 years, but really like the last 3 years, there's been a huge acceleration in interop of like simple value transfer from one chain to another. But there are like plenty of other primitives out there within crypto that aren't value transfer, that are like other things around value or other things around data, which is like you could make so much better now that there are 100 different ecosystems out there that matter. And that is like ultimately the fundamental problem that LayerZero is trying to solve, is like uniting all of these and creating like basically better money. So we will definitely be expanding beyond like the current remit of what Stargate is doing, and that will look like swaps, that will look like intents, that will look like other primitives outside of value transfer. And a lot of this is kind of like already built and already ready. And that's why I say like I think we'll look back in 6 months and be like it was kind of silly that people assumed that Stargate was like this place to move one asset to another across this two different chains.
And I feel like interop teams are best positioned to do this in like an ecosystem with hundreds of chains because how many teams have actually dealt with this like
Yeah,
surface area of chains?
yeah,
If you think about same chain swap teams, like they found it hard to scale meaningfully to 6 to 10 chains, right? But then if you look at the bridging teams, 10 is a bad number. Like if you don't
yeah,
support 25, 30, 40 chains, you're still like lagging behind all the competitors. So I feel like when or like now that crypto is a 100 chain ecosystem, there are probably not many teams better positioned than interop teams to kind of like build on top of this and then add more offerings that can just work across all of these different environments.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think people talk a lot about like building in crypto is hard because it's smart contracts and like it's easy to have bugs and like all of the maths and the rounding errors and whatever. That only gets harder when you go cross chain.
Yeah.
Like when you deal with non-atomicity and you have to like think about how that impacts the like guaranteed execution of a like it's not just like execute or revert. It is like execute and then maybe revert on the other side, but maybe execute. And if not, then like you have to deal with so many different things. Now there's kind of like multi-hop ideas of having like
Mhm.
a central hub. It just like it gets so much harder. And to your point, the scope of complexity that we kind of have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, I think makes us very well served to like really build some cool things.
Mhm. Now I want to get into the nitty gritties of like the bridging world, right? So I was before recording, I was looking at some of the jumper data, and interestingly, like we've seen this trend now that intent based bridges have started winning all types of order flow. Like earlier, it was just the small size transactions, but of late, over the last 3 months, we've seen Relay across gas.zip, like since they've increased their limits, actually winning a lot of the bigger size transactions as well. I'm curious, like if you've seen that trend as well in your
Yeah,
observation.
I think so. I think Stargate V2 as a protocol is definitely doing less volume than it was before. There are lots of different factors that are playing into it. I think one is the uh, well, there are a few different things. So one is I think a lot of the intent-based bridges have larger capacity or larger
Mhm.
size. Like TK's been kind of public about like how his limits have increased. Like especially going to and from hype, it's like all of a sudden $25,000 when before his
Yeah,
limits were like $100, and like that increases your if you can do a $25,000 transaction, that's a lot of $100 transaction. So
and it's not just
volume going.
25,000, right? Like if you look at the balance sheets of some of the intent based bridges, it goes up to 2 million, 3 million, 5 million at some point.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And same is true for Relay. I think Across has probably always been the one with larger
Yeah.
size. That's less true now. It looks like, but like Relay seems to be doing a couple $100,000 on like some popular pathways, particularly for like stables that they're solver holes. I don't think like access to capital is that difficult of a problem. Like okay, beyond like whatever 20, 30, 50 mil, yes, it is a problem, but like getting 20 mil into a solver is not that hard, and you can pay like a pretty standard interest rate on it. So I think that means they can facilitate more flow. Um, I think people are more trusting of their systems, which is great to see. And then the other thing is that like the like fee compression
Hmm.
is actually remarkable. And again, this is something that TK from Gassip, I'll always use him to as these examples. Like, I think these teams are just willing to torch treasuries and like
Hmm.
subsidize every single route. And so uh, the one criticism that is like non-debatable around messaging-based bridges, aka Stargate V2, is that they are more like gas expensive. So like the cheapest you could ever get a Stargate V2 taxi in terms of like gas consumption is I don't know, like say like 4 cents because you have to submit it on source chain and then you have like the LayerZero message to the other side. And with intent based bridges, especially something like Relay and especially something like Gasip, where you literally just give them money, you just like send
Yeah.
them money and it's 21,000 gas. Like obviously Stargate's transactions will never be that cheap. And so if they are subsidizing the route or like providing the route at a loss, plus like they just consume less gas, then obviously Stargate will never be cheaper. And I think as we've discussed to like the world's end, people care about cost, especially on something like Jumper. So when you look at Jumper's data, people typically select the top one, which is the best route. I think for a long time that was the Stargate V2 bus. People don't even the bus is like not the cheapest anymore, and so I think yeah, having more capacity within intense space bridge is super important. And I think the intense space bridges with the most capacity will continue to win out. And then I think teams being willing to torch their treasuries for distribution also helps them do well.
I think they've also been super like creative with data and the routes they support for different like assets and the pairs actually. So like I was just checking Jumper and then you can see teams being super specific about the pairs they support. Like it's not just USDC to USDC at this point. There's also like hype to USDC, and then they've done their research and they're very specific about what route they want to subsidize at some point.
Yeah. And that is the other thing, which is like it is a lower lift to bring something like GasZip to Hyper EVM
Mhm.
than it is to bring something like Stargate to get to Hyper EVM. For a number of different reasons. But being able to support like and I think like this is no surprise to Leafy. Like this is the same reason you were building your intent system. It's like it's kind of low lift to get it somewhere, at least like over the line, so you can start
Yeah.
servicing that route. And being able to offer like a soul to hype swap is again super difficult for something like Stargate to do, but not overly difficult for something like a GasZip to do. Um, and so yeah, you kind of get the order flow that people are looking for.
So, what do you think about this shift now, and like, how do you plan to defend or regain this share? I'm not sure. I'm not just talking about it from like a jumper or leaf perspective, because that's just like one part of the market, right? But this clearly kind of shows that intents are here to stay because users obviously appreciate the speed, appreciate the low cost. So, how do you kind of like rectify this trend?
Yeah, I mean, the intents were always going to be here to stay. They will always continue to serve the market, which they have served forever, which is the like retail order flow, right? And like even the examples that we were just talking about is mostly like whatever sold to hype. It is like the people who are trading and like thrashing around with 5 to 50K is or just call it like sub, I don't know, sub 10, sub 50K is like a real market and is probably the majority of Jumper's user base. I think is mostly kind of like retail users. Um, and it has never ever been a question that like that is a user base and that is a problem to solve.
Mhm.
And I think I've always said that like again, like Stargate V2 is not solving for that problem. Stargate V2 is solving this like underlying problem. The more what I have always thought is like the more complex problem to solve, and then expanding into like intents above that stack just makes so much sense. And so I said it in my love letter to intents that I put out a couple months ago, and I've said it on stage before. But like I think the best intents based protocol will be one that is built on top of Stargate V2. Use Stargate V2 for rebalancing. I think uh, having a intent based swap system that is loaded with a ton of capital and executes incredibly fast to again serve for that user base is super important. And yeah, watch this space.
I mean, you guys have obviously been teasing intents, and like for anyone who's actually looking, that there are a lot of different hints, right? And intents is one of them, and swaps are another one, right? So I think I saw a swap timber tweets or something on those lines.
Yeah, we need to
So
remove the keys from whoever tweeted that.
yeah, I mean, it was not bad. Like at least it caught my attention. So yeah, like once you have intents and once you have swaps, it's sort of like a complete offering for value transfer, like same chain swaps, in covering intents for like retail, and then you obviously have OFTs as well for the larger size transactions. Like OFTs, like despite these intent protocols doing well, Stargate's volume has still been going up rapidly month on month, right? And OFTs have played a big part in that. But if you look at the ecosystem in general, other teams also have their token standards, and that has not translated into the same volume. So I'm curious if you think that the OFTs and like Hydra are your main differentiator, and if you have any thoughts on like why other teams haven't been able to translate their token standards into big volume generators.
um, on V2 and Hydra, I think like as I said earlier, I think it's very difficult to replicate Hydra.
Mhm.
I don't. I'm not sitting here saying it's
It's
impossible.
just
I'm
like
like it's
it's a mint and burn service, right? Like if you think about it, Dbridge did it in 2023. Like they had the Interop as a service toolkit where they would charge like a 10K retainer or something like that. I think that
yeah.
was similar. But then it's
There
also,
are other things that
yeah,
have been similar. They're just like less widespread. And I think it was
exactly.
you that asked me this before. Like, was it a combination of like Stargates as tech and like whatever Stargate pushing it as well as like LayerZero and like the strong impact that LayerZero has on the industry? Like, yes, absolutely. Um, and I this the fact that we're like building other things into the Stargate product doesn't mean that like Hydra is not going to expand anymore. Like we're still Stargate V2 will still expand.
Right.
to all of the new ecosystems, it serves a really, really important purpose. Um, and on the OFTs point, I think, and I'd be curious, I've seen a couple of these over the years. I'd be curious for people to do it again. I think there are like a few things that make OFTs more successful than kind of other token standards. I really, really strongly believe that the developer experience around deploying an OFT is so much better than some of the other token standards. And again, like I've seen a couple developers post like, here's
Right.
my story of like I built on these different token standards. I'd be curious if people tried that again, what they would say today, because I think the experience is a lot better today. And then I think also like all of the kind of like services around the OFT and around LayerZero messaging, um, like how easy it is to like find DVNs and know that like DVNs actually work, to know that like most DVNs operate within like a pretty tight SLA, to know that like the LayerZero executor, which you can choose as your default executor, just
Mhm.
works every single time. Like I I think if you go and then other tooling around like LayerZero scan is by far the best like interop scan in my opinion, biased, but I just think like again it like indexes incredibly quickly. You can see your errors on there, you can retry executions on there, you can see why your retry failed, and like I just think that the entire support around like LayerZero as a tool for developers is just goes like above and beyond what others are able to or have been able to provide. Um, and then a lot of the teams that we work with just being super super strong.
I think so that like the developer experience, of course, is super important, but that sort of addresses a different part of the question, right? Like because it's there's no doubt Layer Zero has one of the best offerings when it comes to token standards. But if you look at the other token standards in terms of adoption, I feel like some of the token standards have kept up. Like I do see Wormhole having some distribution. Chainlink also has like done decently well, but I haven't still seen that adoption translate into actual volume. So maybe there's like something different. Like you said, maybe it's just the teams that have adopted the tech stack and then how they've used the tech. Like USD, there's only one USDT zero, for example, and then they've just done so well in the last 6 months.
Yeah, yeah, and again, it's not like definitely not sitting here and saying like uh Athena grew to the size that they did because they chose the OFT, but I don't think it's non-zero. Like I think if you ask Guy and Nick, like they the level of ease with which they can expand to a new ecosystem helps them get to these ecosystems when they need to, and that makes a huge impact. Like getting somewhere at the right time, like if they say whatever, we're deploying this OFT today and we are launching today, like they're able to do that. And there's just, I think they've done that kind of multiple times. And again, that comes with the developer tooling being right, the support systems around it being right, like knowing that scan will just like auto update, whatever. I think it's definitely not, um, it's definitely not causation, but there is a true correlation.
Mhm. And do you see a world where like any of the other token standards catch up? Because as we're moving in this direction, there's only going to be more and more tokens, right? So there's that also means opportunity, and even if one protocol does dominate like 60% of the 60%, 70% of the market, there's still a lot more opportunity. So there's still scope for like a comeback in a way, or like there's still scope for other teams to do well. But I'm curious, like I don't know, like if that actually translates into volume on paper, or if there's like a stronger push from other teams at some point. I'd be curious to see how that plays out.
Be very curious too. I think you'd probably have a better answer to this because my opinion is naturally biased. Like I look at the Dune dashboards that are out there. LayerZero is doing like 90% of the like 30-day rolling volume across different chains between the token standards. I think that sort of impact really begins to compound, and you can see that in the charts. Like it was 60% like 4 or 5 months ago. It is now 90%. I think that
Mhm.
just kind of continues. I think if you are a very, very serious team building in crypto and you look at that chart, so there's like one answer for who you're going to deploy with, and I think that kind of is showing. Like we add 30 to 50 OFTs to Stargate's front end every single week, and if you look at like the announcements of teams going with other token standards, like I think there's like one or two a week. And so again, those that really begins to compound, and I think um again, this is not me saying that like, we've won. There's no
Yeah.
chance that like other token standards
Yeah.
will ever succeed or ever like win a major asset. I just think like we're definitely going in the right direction
Mhm.
and accelerating.
Yeah. And then as we move into this direction where everything gets tokenized, how do you see LayerZero and Stargate kind of positioning for that? Like you're obviously positioned well in the Interop ecosystem for your token standard being used for a lot of the activity. But then I feel like even now when I go and talk outside of Interop and like talk to all of the different teams, interop is interop token standards are still not top of mind in a way unless you actually tell them the benefits, right? So there's still a BD and education effort there. So maybe there's a lot more work to be done in that direction. But do you see a world where um, every asset is sort of like minted on token standards, and then because of that, there's just like
Yeah.
ease of asset movement? Like that's the
A,
ideal world, of course.
100%. And it's interesting. Like Brian used to say that like the ideal future, and this was like 3 years ago. He used to say like the ideal future is that nobody knows what layer zero is because it's like the
Mhm.
underlying tech. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter whether you're using the OT. It matters to the asset issuer because like their life becomes a lot better, but like to the user, it doesn't matter. And we've always said like it shouldn't matter to the user. But I think like there is an absolute inevitability to all asset issuance being on top of layer zero and the OFT standard. And you're already seeing this. Like I'm wearing the Hyperliquid hoodie, right? Everyone's talking about USDH, the stablecoin ticker, and
Mhm.
like all of the front runners are Paxos built with the OFT. You have Agora who've said that they're working with layer zero on it. You have Sky come out yesterday who said that USDH would be built on layer zero. Like the only way to like for these asset issuers to do the expansion that they're doing is with Interop token standards, and they kind of know that, and all of them have like their selected partners. I think Layer Zero is this chosen selected partner for a lot of these things. Beyond stablecoins, moving into like general token issuance or like tokenization of stocks and equities and whatever. Ondo with their global markets
Mhm.
announcement, like they minted 100 stocks last week on mainnet, and they announced that it will be going to BNB and Solana using the Layer Zero OFT standard, like using Layer Zero messaging. Like all of these things, there is no question anymore that they will live on multiple chains. Like zero question. Nobody is ever going to issue on just Ethereum. And if you do issue on just Ethereum, like you better believe that someone is going to bring that asset to where people want it on another chain. And that is kind of like what Hydra did, right? Like with USDC, okay, it wasn't just Ethereum, but like bringing USDC, bridge USDC to new ecosystems that need it day one, or even like bridge wrap ETH to new ecosystems. All of these assets are going to live everywhere, and the only way to do that like scalably is with interop standards, and like Layer Zero is the absolute front runner in that. So
I think it's amazing to see like the whole journey until this point, right? Like from
yeah.
launch to actually launching the token standard to seeing this position where we're talking about how every asset is being launched on token standards and like OFTs. Like I remember the time where like the discourse used to be just fighting about the nitty gritties of the token
Yeah.
standard itself, right? Like
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
definitely moved way past that point, and it's almost a really nice feeling, right? Like because of course, like we've all bet on Interop doing well, and then now suddenly everyone, actually not suddenly, but everyone is talking about the same things, and like the tech is being adopted. So it's a super nice feeling to see that play out.
Yeah. It is very I mean, I'm not surprised and you're not surprised, but as you said, like we've spoken about this for 3 or 4 years now. And it is yeah, it's just really, really cool. And again, like especially this point around the like hyperliquid stablecoin, like all of these asset issuers coming out and being like, we're launching and our top three partners are like, whoever it may be, like this fund, this interrupt partner, and this
Yeah.
card, for example. I think is really cool, and there will be a couple more proposals coming out, also built with layer zero. That is just like, yeah, it's just really cool to see. And this is what I've always said. People like ask if you could work in like any other crypto company, if you could work in any other, like I wouldn't work anywhere else. Like we are part of everything. We're part of every chain launch, a part of every asset issuer, a part of every um yeah, like discussion that is happening in crypto. Like everybody needs to use LayerZero and or Stargate, and it's like it's just such a cool position to be in for someone who loves this industry. So yeah, I'm happy.
Angus, thanks a lot for your time. I feel like every time we talk to each other, it's super just like relaxed and then super honest as well, which is what I like. And I still get anxious before any sort of like recording, but with you, it's just like a super comfortable chat. So I really
You're very
enjoy
kind,
this.
Arjun. I hope to see you on some of the travels coming up.
Yeah. Thanks for your time, and hopefully, I'm looking forward to all the things that you guys launch in the future.
For sure. Thanks for having me.